Road Gang Radio, and you're rolling with Jimmy Mack, live from the Fastport Studios in Nowla.
Nala?
Nowlands?
Nala?
Nola?
Ain't no such place as Nolans. I'll give you the three pronunciations.
Nolans.
If you're from Ohio, you can say New Orleans. You can say the city of New Orleans, which, by the way, is what the uptown guys say. Since you live uptown, Madison, I'll give everybody your address right now.
I don't live uptown. I moved, remember? I live in the Lower Garden District.
It's uptown.
That is uptown. What?
Okay, let me get really clear about this. These are a lot of newfangled terminologies that real estate developers added. Okay? The Lower Garden District, by the way, the area you live in is actually the Irish Channel. If we're being really technical about that, that's the LGD is something that was invented like the Bywater. The Bywater is actually 2 blocks that are actually by the water, and then they somehow made it like 10 blocks because Bywater sounds a lot better than living in the lower 9th Ward.
Oh yeah.
Which, by the way, I think sounds groovy as hell. I want to, I want to live in the Bronx. I want to live in the Battery. I want to live in the Irish Channel. I don't want to live in the Lower Garden District. Oh, but that's all considered uptown. That whole area. They like to demarcate themselves because they're a bunch of fancy pants.
Okay.
But the opposite of fancy pants is on this day in 1951, Jesse the Body Ventura, wrestler and former governor, was born on this day. I love this quote from him. I would rather be uncomfortable with the truth than to be lied to in comfort. And of course, his real name is James George Llanos. Jesse the Body Ventura was born on this day in 1951. That's how I feel about Kevin Lindsey. I would rather be uncomfortable with the truth than lied to in comfort. By the way, if you don't know him, I don't know where you've been all my life, but he is the manager of technical service over at TravelCenters of America. This is Maintenance Matters. And speaking of the truth, today the truth doesn't hurt. Today the truth will set you free because it turns out that if you focus on affordability and sustainability, retreads are actually the way to go, right, Kevin? Hey, man.
Hey, yeah, that's right. How you doing, dude?
I don't have any complaints. On a more groovy birthday than Jesse Ventura, although I don't know what could be more groovy, it's also Linda Ronstadt's birthday. She was born on this day in 1946, which makes me feel really old. Do you feel old yet?
Yeah. No kidding.
I mean, good God Almighty, she looks great. By the way, she's doing fine. So there you go.
I think that's a true statement for my entire life that I can remember. She always has.
She always has, man. And by the way, she actually has a great quote.
And sounds great.
Oh, she sounds terrific. I can't, like I said, and by the way, she's one of those artists that if you're a country and western fan, she's got something for you. If you're a soft rock fan, she's got something for you. If you like old time 1930s and 40s music, she's got something for you. It's all groovy stuff. It's all pretty terrific. So I wanted to kind of jump in here because we're talking about everything old is new again. So let's kind of unpack, give us a 30,000-foot view of all this stuff, and then we can kind of go from there.
Yeah. Well, are we talking about my subject matter on tires and retreads now?
Yeah, no, Linda Ronstadt. We can go with that still. No,
Okay.
of course. We're talking about retreads and tires and all that stuff. So I'm sorry.
Hey, I'll talk about whatever you want to talk about.
I know you won't. Oh, by the way, here's one more birthday that you will love. Speaking of Blazing Saddles, which we talked about earlier, today is Alex Mongo is a pawn in the game of life's Karras' birthday. He was born on this day, which is a pretty groovy thing. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Let's talk about retreads.
Well, I was always one of those guys for years. I've been in this industry a long time. Retreads have always been one of those things. In the back of my mind, I'm like, I really can't stand, because it seems like you have so many issues with retreads and everything. But you got to remember, retreads, when I was younger and actually physically working on trucks all the time and actually busting my butt and changing tires and everything on the side of the road, all that good stuff. There's a lot has changed in retreads and the way retreads are manufactured. All these processes are so much better than they used to be. And there's a lot of standards that are so much better than they used to be for these things now. So to me, that's one of the things that's, when something gets a stigma from a generational stigma like retreads seem to have a lot of times, it's because, you know, it was well founded in the beginning. You know, there was probably a lot of issues with retreads, especially on heavy duty big truck tires, you know, for several years. But, you know, that's all changed. It really has. And one of the things, I did a little thing here about a year ago, actually at Matt's, a couple shows ago. And some of the research I did, I got to noticing, but about 80%, and this scares a lot of people, but it goes back to one of the reasons I'm really not crazy about flying, but 80% of aircraft tires in the U.S. are retreads. That tells you how safe they really are. In my opinion.
Well, no, and when I saw that number, by the way, it actually made me feel really good, because I'll tell you this, there are two things at play there, is that the airlines, despite the fact that they gouge us every direction they possibly can, are also looking for ways, given the high overhead of what things cost, of looking for the most sustainable and cheapest ways they can do things. They also know, stockholders know, that if anything goes wrong, even if they don't care about human life, and some of them do actually, even if they don't care, there's no worse way to tank your stock in the airlines than have things go wrong. So they're not going to put tires on those planes that they think are going to tank their stock. It's actually a really good sign of how far far retreads have come in regards to their safety and sustainability, right?
Yeah, and you know, to be honest with you, it kind of goes back to one of these things. There was kind of a quote I had many years ago now. I actually was working for this major manufacturer of they make truck components. They make all kinds of things worldwide, and I was a service rep for them, and I had a class. It was kind of a strange class we went to, but it was the first time they had brought a lot of different people together from their different segments of the business. And I remember one of the guys I was in class with was actually manufactured parts for aircraft, you know, some of the valves and different things used in hydraulics. And we got to talking about, you know, failures in parts per million in the manufacturing processes. And I was like, yeah, you know, on the truck side, you know, we're dealing with this. And he's like, see, that never flies with aircraft. He said, we can't even have one in a billion, you know, because that could cause. I said, yeah. I said, no, I agree. I like that. No. So that's one reason those parts for aircraft and things like that cost so much more, because they have to meet so strict of standards. And that's what, you know, and I know that sounds kind of funny telling a story like that, but to me, that kind of ties back into, that goes to show you just how good the process of retreading tires really are nowadays, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that when I saw that was, and by the way, when Kevin sent me his notes, that was the first thing framed at the top, and I did not know that stat, Kevin, and I saw it, and I went, that is a great time. My grandfather was a pilot, and I remember one time one of my first cousins was on a plane with us, and he was complaining about the fact that we were sitting on the tarmac, and my grandfather turned around and he goes, you would much rather have a problem on the ground than in the air. You need to trust me on this. They cross their T's and dot their I's, and like I said, some of it is done out of the altruism of respect for human life. The other side is the fact that, man, anybody can tell you, anything goes wrong in a plane, even when it's not, you know, catastrophic, fatal, stock doesn't recover well. They have to do everything right, and it's a really kind of great thing. I wanted to also at the top, since we're at a 30,000-foot view, pun intended, to remind people as well, too, that the number one problem, this really goes back to maintenance, isn't retreads. It's people don't have a good maintenance plan. It's underinflation. It's people not putting enough air in their tires that is the real big killer here, right?
It is because not enough air pressure causes a lot of heat generation. Heat is really what kills tires. You know, not only retreads, new tires. You know, the new tires can blow out just as easy as retreads can. You know, one thing, there was something else I looked at, and I don't think I ever put it in this document, but I think it was a DOT study or something they did of because we all know about driving down the interstate.
You put it in,
especially
Kevin.
this time of
Kevin,
year.
you put it in, brother. I know exactly where you're going. It's the bits and pieces. I was telling Dre and Madison before the show started, the bits and pieces on the side of the road. This is a great stat.
Yeah.
Hit people with this one.
Well, you've got all of these gators, right? I mean, that's what I've always called them.
That's
You
what I
got
call
these
them, too.
gators in the road, I mean, they're all over the place, but 68% of those you see, according to this study, actually comes from new tires, not retreads. But I can tell you why they're there: underinflation. That's the thing, You've got to keep that air pressure right.
Let me ask you a question of clarification, since the title of this place is that maintenance does matter. Is the fact that all of those gators, whether they are retreads or whether they're brand spanking new, are usually a result of a lack of proper maintenance and application rather than a result of the tires themselves?
Oh, absolutely, and that's true, and that's that's one reason I kind of wanted to bring this subject up, because first of all, it's that time of year. Yesterday I was on the road from Tennessee all the way up here to south of Cleveland. Stuck in Lodi again up here. So, but we're getting ready for our internal tech competition up here this week, which is next week. But all these bits and pieces of tires I saw on the side of the road. I said, I haven't talked about tires in a while. I need to dig into my retread thing and let's talk about this stuff.
Yeah, and it's also, like I said, the other thing is the fact that everybody's got suspicions about why their tires go wrong, and we're going to debunk a whole bunch of myths today, but at the core of all of this is the fact that most of the reason, other than genuinely faulty tires, but that's a bad maintenance plan too. If you have genuinely bad tires, it means you haven't done your diligence in picking them out. Kevin, before I get to these 4 big myths that you are going to systemically debunk across the course of the next 20 minutes or so, we do have a phone call. I do want to take that really quickly. Who do we got coming in here, Dre? Driver. Hey, man. Hey, Jerry. What's going on, dude?
Hey, good morning. Good morning, everybody on the two of you. Sorry, I don't mean to hijack your segment. I don't have any questions.
That's okay.
But I do have a question. Of all them gators, I wonder how many percentage of them are caused by people exceeding the speed rating of the tires, because what I'm hearing is that the tires are speed rated for 75, and I've seen people pass me going a lot faster than that.
Oh,
so I'm just wondering
absolutely.
if that plays into it.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Absolutely, yeah, it sure does. I mean, I would say probably behind under pressure. What? That's a new word.
Underinflation. By the way, I like underimpression. I like under and pressure. By the way, it sounds like a Queen song I haven't heard yet. I'm really thrilled.
Yeah, well, it's groovy, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
But no, besides that, exceeding speed ratings is probably a huge factor. Because, when tire manufacturers make these tires and everything's put together, and I know this is kind of maybe a little bit of a stretch, but if you ever have a chance, it don't matter if it's an automotive or a big truck tire plant, if you ever have a chance to see anything on how tires are manufactured, it will absolutely blow your mind. It did mine. I've always thought, hey, tires are, they're black, they're round, they roll, blah, blah, blah. What is it to tires? Well, let me tell you, there's a lot goes into those tires. There's so much engineering goes into these things, even in the manufacturing process of the way the little wire beads, these radial tires with the wires through the rubber and all this stuff. It's amazing how they put all this together. But, they're all designed for certain speeds at certain loads. So the load rating and the speed rating play a huge factor. And I think in a lot of that we see that may not be due to under inflation.
By the way, though, Diver makes a really good point, too, and we're talking about death by 1,000 rotations in the sense that if you are driving too fast and your tires are underinflated, it's a toxic combination for a much shorter lifespan on that tire. That's a really good insight, Diver. What's happening with you today before I shuffle you off this radio coil? Final thought.
Today's my Friday, and I'm excited to hear Lindsey LaRue's musical guest because, you know, the name of the band is
Cowboy Mouth. Yeah. Cowboy Mouth. Cowboy Mouth. All right, get out of here. Good to talk to you, Diver.
Have a good one.
You
Later.
too, sir. By the way, Kevin, we've already debunked one of the big ones. Is that a lot of people think, well, it's, you know, we'll get to myth number one. They're not safe, and we've already kind of debunked that. They're not only not safe, but it turns out that the kind of work that goes into them, making sure that they are as retreads, ensures their safety. Correct?
That's absolutely correct. Yes, absolutely.
So,
and you know, if you, a lot of people think they don't perform as well as new tires either. You know, that's another one of those myths. But when you really stop and think about some of the things, you know, that I just brought up about how they're actually made and manufactured and everything, they actually have to meet even stronger or more stringent standards than new tires do, simply because they have already been used. Does that make sense?
No, it makes perfect sense.
There's a lot more goes into actually making a recap or a retread than there actually is a new tire, because that casing has to go through such rigorous testing and everything just to be a good casing. So.
That's the most expensive part of the process as well, right? I mean, it's the casing where most of the money and research goes into, kind of the development and the actual manufacture of the casing is where the real action is in regards to cost, correct?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, not to get too far off here, but kind of to jump back to that manufacturing thing and this whole thing about, you see a lot of these blowouts from new tires as well. But a lot of people, I think, really don't realize that a new tire being manufactured from scratch, the casing, and the sidewalls and everything, all that casing is made first, and then the tread is put on, much like the process of a retread. So it's really not that much different anyway. So, Well,
I wanted to ask you a question. I've got a weird comp here, weird comparison. It's the thing is the fact that if I buy a new pair of boots, they're brand spanking new, and yes, they're up to standard and all that kind of stuff. They don't feel anywhere near as good as they feel 6 months later. I mean, is it a matter of also, like I said, getting them broken in? I hate to use the word broken, but getting them kind of used to what they're supposed to do. And the fact that I put on new shoes, they don't feel very comfortable at first. I mean, they don't feel as good as they could possibly feel. But once I get them on the road and rolling, walking, they start to really work, correct?
Absolutely. And that's a great analogy, Jimmy, because think about that. Now, think about that. What happens if you put on a pair of my boots that I've broken in? They're not going to feel as comfortable to you, are they?
No,
so
absolutely not.
We start swapping these tires off of one truck onto another. There's some more of your issue, right? So it could be.
Well, it goes back to one of your notes that kept coming up throughout the notes, by the way, and it's and one that that you kind of intuitively know, but it always helps to kind of articulate it, is that you've got to make sure that when you're swapping tires out, you're swapping them into the proper application as well. That's a big thing that gets people in trouble. Can you kind of unpack that a little bit for us, Kevin?
Well, much what was already alluded to here, you've got to have the right load rating, speed rating, and all that. But not only that, but the position. Because a lot of times, some tires are manufactured to just go on trailers.
Right.
And, I'll be honest with you, I've had customers that have spare tires, on their trailer, and they need a steer tire, but, they don't want to spend the money right now. They want to get it back home. Hey, can you just put that? No, you can't do that, because you can't put a trailer tire on a steer tire. That's not how that works. Steer tires are for steering position on heavy-duty trucks. There's no way around that. That's one of those, because you think about that. anything happens, anyone that's ever had a blowout on a steer tire, even in your car, it's a scary situation. Can you imagine 80,000 pounds pushing with that blowout? That's even scarier, and that's the last thing you ever want happening, is anything like that.
The other thing that I thought was really interesting, we talked about the aircraft carrier operators. If you think that if you think they don't perform as well as new tires, ask anybody who's a pilot. But you can also ask ambulance drivers. You can also ask the folks that drive the fire trucks as well too. These are used by people, and like I said, I mean, when you're dealing with airplanes, you're also dealing with corporations that are looking at the bottom line. But many a fire truck has no other obligation other than the safety of the men and women inside of those trucks and the people that they are serving. They're not going to be making these choices. It's just kind of a way of example to put these tires on if, in fact, they're going to put, the ability to control a city's fire problems in harm's way. It just doesn't make much sense. It's a great example of how far this has come, correct?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Excuse me. Absolutely. So, another part of that is, it's amazing. So many times we think, hey, and one of these myths is about how much tire retreads cost. Some people think they actually end up costing you more, which they really don't, because overall, as an industry, it's close to $3 billion a year that is saved in tires. Because you stop and think about it in trucking, what's the top two things that trucking companies, owner-operators, if you're doing trucking as a business, your top two expenses for years has been what? Fuel, tires, right? That's where the rubber meets the road, right? It's one of those things that it can save so much money, it truly can. So.
Yeah, and I'm always curious about that too, in the sense that it's like people don't realize that if we were just simply buying more and more and more new tires, the cost would be astronomical. But at the end of the day, I'm laughing about this because anybody listening now and from Diver Driver's phone call knows this as well too, is the fact that none of this really works without a really good maintenance plan. That's really what it kind of comes down to, because all those blowouts we talked about are about deflation. Is that so much of it, we do the combination we talked about with Diver Driver. The idea is that you underinflate, you push the truck too hard, it's not in the proper application. So much of this is about human decisions rather than the quality of the equipment. Even with the best equipment you pick, if you don't have a good maintenance plan, that's where the problem comes in. So talk about what it means, even when you get retreads, what it means to have a good maintenance plan to maintain your tires for the longest possible life.
Well, obviously, first and foremost is inflation. Keeping air pressure up is that has always been the number one cause of any premature tire failure. Is underinflation. So air pressure is so critical, but also there's the aspect of keeping tread depths relatively close, because what can happen if you have, say, a set of duals on an axle on a tractor, all four tires on that axle all the way across. When you stop and think about that two sets of duals that make that up going across, you are, you really want those things within a few 30 seconds of each other as far as tread wear. Because what can happen is if you end up putting one new tire on, and let's say it has 20 30 seconds of tread depth, and the one next to it is down to 6 or 8, something like that, you can be talking about a half-inch difference. What that really means, once you put that weight on that tire and it goes down the road, now all of a sudden that new one is actually carrying more of the weight, which is also compressing it down in the road as it rotates, every rotation. But what you don't think about here is once you get up to speed, Now that tire that's actually smaller in diameter, maybe a half inch shorter, or whatever, now it has room to expand, because you think about it, as you spin something, it tries to go out away from the center part of where it's spinning. So as it does that, it's going to be the center part of that tread. So even though it has less tread, now it's going to wear in that center much, much quicker, because that's all that's catching that weight going down that road. And then next thing you know, if it was down to 6 or 8 30 seconds, you may only go a few hundred miles, and it can wear 2 or 3 30 seconds off of that thing when they're out of whack like that. Not the same size. So when you really stop to think about the physics of how all that works, it's like, wow, and now when it does that, now you've got a concentrated heat area that can actually cause those problems, because that heat is what kills them, whether it's under inflation or not, evenly wearing across the road, distributing the weight and then the torque from the truck. So,
by the way, that is, Kevin, the best description, the best explanation for why things seem to go so bad so quickly sometimes. Because that's it. It becomes almost a domino effect, kind of a catastrophic failure, in the sense that it's like one thing goes wrong and then other things start compensating. Their compensation then actually creates wear and tear, and that accelerates the deterioration right across the, I hate to say platform, but right across the tires. I mean, literally, as each tire begins to have problems, it sets off other problems in tires that otherwise would be functioning just fine, correct?
Absolutely. And and that's why there's standards out there to follow as far as tread depth goes and things like that, right? And that's why they're there. And to be honest, even though there's standards there, I get the fact that you're stuck on the side of the road, in the middle of nowhere. You got to get it fixed quick. Well, that's fine. I was in the military. I understand the importance of hey, this is mission critical. It's got to get up, got to get going. But here's the thing: don't forget about that, right? And I think what happens, especially in larger fleets, possibly bigger operations, a lot of times there's a truth to that conception that the bigger a company is, the more little things seem to fall through the cracks. Well, those types of things like that. Hey, well, yeah, this trailer or this truck had a blowout. It had a new tire put next to an old tire. It was supposed to come right back in, but for whatever reason, it got dispatched out differently, and now we got all these problems with it. And you can even see rear axle wear issues come out of things like that. It is the same. So you want that consistency.
By the way, a quick fix often can get you to the next location, but shouldn't take you any further. The last word I'm actually going to give to Chowder, who actually spoke up on YouTube. You'll love this. What if you use something correctly and it lasts longer and works properly? Who would ever guess that could happen? Kevin Lindsey has joined us this morning. Ain't that something? Kevin Lindsey, as he is off to do on Tuesdays, joins us for Maintenance Matters. He, of course, is the manager of technical service for TravelCenters of America. Kevin, masterfully done. Thank you, my friend. It's good to talk to you. And happy birthday to Linda Ronstadt as well. That's my final thought. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.